So let's take a look at what we created last time. We created a start game button and a credits button that essentially take us to the first level of our game. What I'd like to do is just kind of clear up this image a little bit. You can see it's transparent here. So with my panel selected, which has our PopCan image on it, I'm going to click this little white box here, and I'm just going to take the alpha all the way up. So that way it fills our entire screen. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Something else I want to do is in our scenes folder is I'd like to create a new scene, and I'm just going to call this scene test bed. And looks like that wasn't a scene. Let's try that one more time. Create a scene. I'm going to call this scene test bed. All right, so let's go into that scene. Now, this scene itself is going to be a gray box of our level and our characters. And so what I want to do is I'm going to download a package from the asset store. So I'm going to go to Windows and then I'm going to go to Package Manager. And actually, I think it's built into the core. You don't necessarily have to go to the asset store. So I'm going to go to Packages and Project. I'm going to go to Unity Registry and I'm going to scroll down. And what I'm looking for is something called Pro Builder. And you can see they're in alphabetical order. So I found it here. I'm going to go ahead and install. I'm going to let that install for a minute and pause the video. All right, now that Pro Builder is installed, I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I know that it's installed because there's no install button here. And also up at the top here, I can see Tools, Pro Builder. I'm going to click on Pro Builder window. Now, what I'd like to do is start to gray box out a very simple corner of a level. We'll get into modeling and stuff later, but right now we're just trying to set the units for the character's height as well as the level size. Now, briefly, what Pro Builder is it's really just a modeling and a modeling tool that you can use to gray box levels. So what I mean by that is if I click on new shape here, you can see down at the bottom I have create shapes and then below it is shape properties. Go ahead and expand all that stuff out. The first one here, it says it'll tell you kind of as you go over it, like how you can create those shapes. But like at the top here, you'll see sprite. Sprite is the image. I want to get a plane here. And I'm just going to, you can hold Alt and I think Control. No, I guess you could just drag it out like that. And there is your mesh size. And I'm just going to reset this to the center of the world. So this is just going to represent my ground plane for now. Like we're going to add buildings and stuff later. You can also go to new shape here and I'm going to make a cube, for example, and I want the size to just be 1 unit. Oops, let's make sure that by 1, and then, so let's say 1, 1, 1, and then I can just Control Shift click, or, oh, there we go. Okay, so I guess you still have to drag it out, but you can go in here and edit the properties of it. And I really just want it to be this big, which is 1 unit big. Now, here's the other thing that you'll notice. There should be a grid texture on here. Let me reset this for a second and hit F to focus on that. Now it's set to 0 in the world. There's a couple things that are missing here. If you're using URP, which we are, which is the updated thing, we have to go updated render. We have to go back to the package manager here. And under Pro Builder, you have to go to dependencies, or is it samples? Yeah, samples. And you have to import the universal render pipeline support. And what this will do is like you'll at first it'll look like it's doing nothing, but you want to go ahead and delete out all this junk. And then now when you create shapes, let's go ahead and create this. It should, unless we have to restart it. Let's see. We might have to restart our scene. It should be attaching that texture to it, that grid texture. Let's see. Yeah, you know what? We might have to restart it, but let's see. Unity version control. Or let's go back to our package manager for a moment to see if there's anything else that I might have missed. See, Pro Builder samples. No, that seems right. I think we just have to, I'm going to pause the video and restart this. So just by closing out the project. So I recreated the project, and I'm still in my test bed. So now when I drag this out, you can see it went ahead and added that grid for me. So it does require a restart. So let's do that one more time. I'm going to create a plane, and I'm just going to make the plane roughly this big as this ground unit. And you could see that we now have a grid here, and that grid is essentially has these little unit markers, and there you could see 1 meter by 1 meter. So let's go to new shape here. Let's go to cube. Let's just drag out a cube like this. And you could see that it helps us have these grid lines to let us know the scale of it. So let's do that one more time. I'm just going to drag out a cube, click, and I'm going to make sure these are all 1 by 1 by 1. Now this is going to represent I'm going to hit W to lock that in, but this is going to represent the overall shape of our can as like a gray box. Now a meter is roughly 3.2 feet. So I want to make my can roughly 6 feet tall. So what I'm going to do is select this face tool here, and these are our editing tools. So for example, like if I want to select a vertex and move it around, or a face, which is where any of these 3 or more edges meet, creates a face. Like see, this is an edge here. And I want to grab this face, and I'm just going to move it up. And what you'll notice is that grid texture that's on there, that image, updates with it. So I'm just going to do something like this where I sort of play around with, the shape, get it so that it fits within those grid markers. So now I have something that's like 6.4 inches tall. So it's a pretty big can. That's can shape. Now what happens is, as you're moving those faces around, is your pivot point, which is this axis here, it starts to shift and move in a weird way. So something that I like to do is, let's go ahead and move this up a little bit, is I like to reset the pivot point. So I'll select this face, so for instance, down here. And if we go to pivot here or center, it's not really showing you the true pivot or center unless you're in object mode. So right now, my pivot point is in that corner. And this is going to be important later when we go to script this for movement and stuff, where we want the object, like if we have our can jump, to detect from where it's hitting the ground, we want to make sure our pivot point is on the bottom. So the way to do that and to get it centered like this is to select the face, and then over here on the side, we're going to do set pivot. And you'll notice it also cleaned up our texture and made it more even. Now when I go back to object mode, you can see our pivot point is set to the bottom or the center here. So I'm going to move this down to the floor, and I'm going to click on freeze transformations, and this is going to set it. Oh, you know what? I need it. Actually, I'm going to leave it there. It's totally fine. And that way, if I want to start my position, my character in the 0, 0 of the world, and I know a lot of this might seem like word salad right now, but you'll get more used to it as we play along. So let's go ahead and rename this as can and underscore container. We'll just make it can cont just for now, and we understand that these are the can container. Because in Blender, we're actually going to model this can. So let's go ahead and save our test bed scene. And this is where we're going to do a lot of our coding and our setup and our testing for now. And then what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to export this out, bring it into Blender, and we're going to use it as a height guide for modeling a can in Blender.